Hello, BretFlix is back with yet another top 5 video. This time around I'm going to discuss my top 5 most underrated Martin Scorsese movies. You know, Scorsese is one of the greats, you know. When and if there's a final history written on film, Scorsese is really going to stand at the top. He's going to stand up there with Bergman and with Hitchcock and with Buñuel, with Spielberg. You know, he's one of the reigning champs. He's probably the greatest living filmmaker there is, rivaled only by maybe Werner Herzog. He's made tons of great movies, a lot of undisputed masterpieces. You have Raging Bull, you have Taxi Driver and Goodfellas, and then other favorites like The Departed, which won him his Oscar finally, and Casino, Last Temptation of Christ, Mean Streets, The Last Waltz, you name it. You know, he's an amazing filmmaker. Never once has made a bad movie in his entire career. He's made some lesser movies, but they're still good, you know. But I'm going to talk about movies of his that may not be like great, you know, may not be masterpieces, but I feel are underappreciated. And I'm actually going to start off with a film he made in 2010 called Shutter Island. Shutter Island, like I said, I feel this is underappreciated, though at the same time it's his most successful movie, like commercially, that he's ever made. But in the years since, I think it's kind of taken an odd direction in terms of its reputation. People are like, oh, I saw the twist coming. I knew he was the 67th inmate or whatever, not inmate, but patient, I should probably say. Even though in this asylum they're treated like inmates. And I don't know, so I feel like people, since they saw that twist coming, they kind of write the whole movie off, which from the trailer you could guess that DiCaprio was number 67 or 66 or whatever the number is. I don't think that's really what this movie was trying to do. I don't think it was trying to surprise you. There are some surprises there's some surprises as it gets to the twist. You know, when you find out he's actually a patient the whole time. Like, there's surprises along the way. Which I guess it kind of reminds me of a quote. I don't know who originally said it, but I know I first heard it in a Rush song, and it goes, the point of a journey is not to arrive. And so it's not about, you know, the final destination, it's about the things that lead to the final destination. But I try not to criticize this movie too harshly, because it is just a genre movie. It's not one of Scorsese's most personal movies he's ever made, though there are some personal themes in the film. It's still just the kind of movie he did sort of just as an exercise, and I mean, and there is like a great story behind it, and there's great performances, but for me this just feels kind of like a technical exercise for Scorsese, where he gets kind of this really dark, interesting story, and he can tell it with a lot of visual flair, you know, something he's really interested in. And there's great images in this movie. It is beautifully shot by the always great Robert Richardson. You have great performances by the entire cast. It's as well made as any movie Scorsese's ever done. And there's some of Scorsese's best sequences in this film too. Like the part, like the dream scene where DiCaprio is holding his wife and she turns to ash. I just think that's just so moving. It brings me to tears every single time I see it. I'm always creeped out by that old lady with with very little hair. Goes shh, gives me chills every time. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a genre picture, not one you're supposed to read too much into. It's just one you're supposed to watch for entertainment, appreciate the technical skill, which Scorsese's technical skill, like I said, it's one of the best. It's as well made as any movie he's ever done. So I feel, you know, maybe for people who have come to criticize this movie in the past, try watching it for that. Try watching it just as an exercise in brilliant filmmaking, an exercise in classical storytelling. You know, it's kind of like the think of it as Martin Scorsese's Hitchcock movie. It's like, I feel like this is the kind of movie Hitchcock would have made if he were still alive today. And then after you watch this, also watch a movie like Cape Fear, that Martin Scorsese's remake of Cape Fear. Yeah, another kind of just exercise, a genre picture. So for my number 5 pick of Martin Scorsese's most underrated films, I pick Shutter Island. And then my number 4 pick is an interesting one. It is a film he made back in 1985 called After Hours. This is I feel like this movie's kind of totally forgotten. Nobody talks about this movie, and I don't know why, because as it says on the very cover of it, it is a terrific movie. Again, kind of like Shutter Island, it's just kind of another exercise for Scorsese. And I love to watch this movie because the story is so twisted and so outlandish. It's so entertaining. Griffin Dunne basically has the entire world out against him, and no matter what he does, his night seems to get continuously worse and worse, and to a point where he reaches such paranoia and such desperation that he will do anything for basically just a sliver of comfort when he finds himself in that woman's basement or whatever, who does the what do you call it? I don't know, that odd art. I don't know what to call it. But there's that part where he just goes like, "Can I just lay on your shoulder for a little bit? I just need some sort of comfort." And so, I mean, I love this movie because of the heights that it goes to story-wise. How crazy Griffin Dunne gets. Griffin Dunne gives a really great performance in this movie. But like I said, this is just kind of another exercise for Scorsese, a movie where he's not too interested in the story. He's more interested in what he can do technically, what he can do with his camera, the ways he can experiment. And so with a movie like this, he can really flesh himself out as a filmmaker and try new things and try a lot of risky things that you otherwise couldn't really try or wouldn't be willing to try in other more story-driven films, more serious films. This movie, I just take it at face value. It's just incredibly entertaining. Seeing the really creative and amazing things Scorsese does with his camera is also, very exciting. So my number 4 pick for Martin Scorsese's most underrated films is After Hours. Okay, so let's get away from these genre movies I've been talking about. Let's get something a lot more story-driven, a lot more character-driven. For my number 3 pick, it is Martin Scorsese's 1974 film, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. This was a big film at the time, and it's still considered kind of a classic. It's just overshadowed by the many other classics Scorsese has made. And this is a movie I've always had great affection for. It stars Ellen Burstyn and Chris Christopherson. Ellen Burstyn, her husband dies, and she is left all alone with just her and her kid. They kind of they sell all the stuff they own. They pack up their car and they hit the road. They are trying to return to a town where she can hopefully resume her lifelong passion to be a singer, which kind of got halted when she met her husband and got pregnant and everything. He made her put her dreams to the side, and so on their way for her to try to fulfill her dreams, they kind of get stuck in the small town where she has to take up a job as a waitress, and it's a very funny movie. It's a very comical movie, but it's also just a very poignant film too. A very feminist movie, and to see the struggle she has to go through just because she's a woman, the way she's sexualized at her job, the struggle she has to put up with trying to take care of her kid. Her kid's also very outspoken and somewhat difficult. He's a good kid. And she loves him to death, and they have a good relationship. But he can at times wear pretty thin on her patience, especially when she has all these other stresses to go through. Like I said, this is somewhat of a classic. I heard that this film spawned a television show, which I haven't seen, but I heard the show did well, and Ellen Burstyn got her Oscar for this film. And but like I said, it is just somewhat overshadowed by Scorsese's other movies, especially with the reputation Scorsese built himself as being a filmmaker who makes violent movies about men and men's insecurities. So the one movie he kind of made about a woman has kind of been pushed to the side in terms of recognizing his whole filmography. And it's a very romantic movie. You know, she falls in love with Chris Christopherson, and they have a relationship together. And it's just such a sweet. I mean, even when you look at the cover, I mean, just look at how sweet that looks. You know, look at just how sincere that is. You know, so it is kind of a unique movie that kind of sticks out in Scorsese's filmography as being unlike other stuff he's made. But it's a wonderful film. Please check this one out. It's called Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. My number 3 pick. Now, my number 2 pick. Again, this was one just like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. It was praised when it came out. It was nominated for Oscars and stuff. But you know, over the years, I feel like it's been overshadowed by Scorsese's more popular films like Goodfellas and Casino, especially since this movie came out in the middle of those two films. This is his 1993 film, The Age of Innocence. You know, The Age of Innocence, it is, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it's not like any other Scorsese movie, but I think it is like other Scorsese movies. His themes are there. His normal themes are there. I love watching Siskel and Ebert's review of this episode, actually, because they compare a lot of the dialogue and the relationships and the dynamics of these relationships to the violence and the hyper-realistic violence of Scorsese's films like Raging Bull and Goodfellas. And it's interesting to think of it in that aspect, because this movie is about forbidden love, basically. You know, it stars Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer, Winona Ryder. Daniel Day-Lewis is engaged to Winona Ryder because that's what society tells him he should do, but he's actually in love with Michelle Pfeiffer. So he struggles with that. You know, he wants to do the right thing and be faithful and be genuinely in love with Winona Ryder, but he's just not. There's nothing against her. She's not at all a bad woman, and he recognizes that. You know, she doesn't deserve any sort of, you know, she doesn't deserve any pain. You know, she's a good woman. She's a faithful woman. She's a strong woman, but it's just not who he loves, and he's really broken up about that. And you know, and so just to think of that and how they talk, and how Siskel and Ebert talk about how that is the same kind of violence as, you know, Jake LaMotta punching a dude in his face and breaking his nose. It's kind of an interesting way to think about this film. This is, I feel like, one of his best movies. It is entertaining. It's very sweet. It's very romantic. And it's also really heartbreaking. It's really well shot. Scorsese hasn't made a whole lot of costume dramas, but of all the costume dramas like this or Sense and Sensibility or something, this one is my personal favorite. Big deal when it came out, nominated for a bunch of Oscars, but over the years it's been forgotten, and I feel like it shouldn't be. I feel like this one should be as remembered and as praised as something like Goodfellas. So my number 2 pick is The Age of Innocence. Now, you know, if you've seen my other top 5 videos, you know I don't have these movies really in any particular order. Like, you know, my number 2, you know, whenever I pick like a number 2 pick, I don't feel like that's better than my number 4 or anything like that. But every once in a while, I will kind of save my personal favorite or something, or what I feel to be the best for last. And this is one of those cases. This is a movie I feel like this is outright Scorsese's most underrated movie. and I feel it's one of his absolute best, and it is a contender for my all-time favorite film too. It is his 1999 film, Bringing Out the Dead, starring Nicolas Cage and Patricia Arquette. Bringing Out the Dead is about Nicolas Cage, and he's a ambulance driver, and he is just miserable. he hasn't been able to save anybody's life in a long time, and just the grief of that and the guilt of that is starting to wear on him a lot. He's having a lot of issues. He's kind of starting to lose his mind. He's not able to sleep at night. This is such. I mean, for me, this movie is a really emotional experience. It is. I feel like Martin Scorsese really put his all into this. He put everything of himself into this. It has everything you know and love by Martin Scorsese. It has an amazing performance by Nicolas Cage. You know, this is back in the 90s when he was loved. Now he's kind of the butt of all jokes. But back in the 90s when he was doing, when he was known for like Leaving Las Vegas and Raising Arizona, like Nicolas Cage was the man, and people loved how wild and crazy he was. And this is the kind of role where he can really be wild. Scorsese was telling him, like, give it your all. And this whole movie, he's so strung out, and he's like, he's yelling, he's freaking out, he's scaring his partners, because this movie takes place over 3 nights. Each night he has a different person who he's riding with in his ambulance, and he's starting to freak those people out. Like, I love Cage's performance in this, and I love how brilliantly made and how brilliantly shot this movie is. Because like I said before, with Shutter Island and After Hours, those were movies that where the story wasn't exactly the most important part, so Scorsese could unhinge himself as a filmmaker, cut loose and experiment and try a lot of things. Well, this is a movie. Well, Bring Out the Dead is a movie where the story is in the foreground. It's like it is the most important part. Yet Scorsese's still doing these really wild things. His use of rock music in the movie is unforgettable, and he does a lot of things with his cameras, spinning them around, speeding things up, doing things in slow motion, really over exaggerating lighting schemes, and there's sequences in this movie that are so like harrowing, where it's like there's this part towards the end where Cage really starts to face his inner demons, and he's walking down these steps into this dark alleyway in New York City, and it really is like he's submerging himself in hell. So yeah, like I said, it's a candidate for it's a candidate for my all-time favorite movie. It's the kind of movie that just breaks me down. I watch this and I'll bawl my eyes out every single time, and I've seen this movie tons and tons of times. So this is, I feel, his most underrated movie. I feel like this movie should compare with his other greats, with his other classics. It should compare with Raging Bull and Taxi Driver. But I guess people just weren't that crazy about it when it came out. Except for, well, let's see, who's this on the back? Oh, Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert, he gave it a great review, called it one of the best movies of the year. On the back here he says, a great film with fire and passion, and it definitely is. It is a very passionate film. It's a really energetic film, it's 2 hours, but it whizzes right by. This is, for me, an obvious masterpiece. Others not so much, I guess. So I guess watch it and see for yourself, but this is my #1 pick for Martin Scorsese's most underrated movie, is Bringing Out the Dead. Well, I hope you liked my choices. Before I let you go, I'm going to quickly recap them, just in case you forgot or skipped over some of the video. I don't know. If you did, I wouldn't blame you. But for pick number 5, I chose Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island. 4, After Hours. 3, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. 2, The Age of Innocence. And finally, my #1 pick, Bringing Out the Dead. So, if you guys, if you guys disagree, agree, think there should be other choices on a top 5 list. I feel like there are other films of his that are underrated that I have a lot to say about, but I had to narrow it down to 5, because it's called a top 5. But if you agree or disagree, let me know. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Comment. You can send me messages. Whatever you want to do. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys around next time.